and welcome back. We've got Nick DeMose in the house. Nick, you're back.
Eric, I'm back already. Good to be here.
We didn't scare you away yet.
I'm back. I continue to be envious of your backdrop there. So pray for my envy, and hopefully those watching it will see my background slowly expand. But yeah, good to be back.
If you're watching on YouTube, I have lots of sports paraphernalia and Cubs, Chicago Bears. I'm a Chicago sports guy, and so I have my favorite is the Wrigley Field seat, the seat back that my sister got me for Christmas one year. So that's hanging on my wall. But yeah, to be honest, Nick, our house was built in the 1980s and it's got wood paneling still. So I'm just trying to hide the wood paneling. So
it's very cozy, very cozy.
Yeah, it's the bear den. There you go, the bear den in my basement. Well, Nick, I'm glad that you're joining us again for a follow-up conversation. We had the past several weeks on the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. We have talked about sports ministry and the future of Momentum Sports and how Momentum Sports wants to partner with you and your church. And so we're excited about not only the opportunity that we have in our churches to partner with sports, to leverage sports to reach the community, but we're going to shift gears a little bit today, and we're going to kind of think about how could a local church actually start building a sports ministry, maybe from the ground up. For others, maybe you have some version of a sports ministry. You're doing a sports camp over the summer and it's a 1-week thing, or maybe for others, you've done a basketball league during the summer, or you've brainstormed different ways you can put a pickleball court in your parking lot. So if that's you, this is the episode for you. We're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're going to maybe talk about common misconceptions that churches have in sports ministry. But Nick, start us off with just the pastor, the ministry leader, maybe the volunteer who has sports ministry on their mind, and they're unsure of what the next step might be. How would you encourage them to kind of assess where they're at and maybe figure out what that next step might be?
Yeah, I think that, and we talked a couple episodes ago as well, but I just fundamentally believe sports is the greatest connector to the community a church has available to it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to reach young families. Kids are doing activities, they're doing sports, so we can either fight it or lean into it. And I think it's better to lean into it.
Yes.
And I think there's so many ways to do it. So I think it's partly looking at just, hey, do we fundamentally want to reach new people in our community? Do we have the heart for that? And if we do, how do we figure out how to use sports? And it doesn't have to be this huge, large scale, large budget operation right away. There are a bunch of little steps people could take. And really, that's the heartbeat behind Momentum Sports, is how do we come along churches that go, hey, I kind of want to do this. I don't know exactly what it looks like or what it costs or what it's going to take or how it's going to work. But just how do we have a conversation, and then we can come alongside and go, hey, let's learn more about your church. I think the customizable effect is super important, because this is not a one size fits all ministry. But how do we come alongside with ideas, resources, curriculums to help people get along the ministry ladder quicker? Starting from brand new, from scratch, it's daunting, but having a partner side by side, you go further and faster that way.
Absolutely. I love that even in your previous role as the sports pastor at CCV out in Phoenix, you guys are a large multi-site church, and we're not just looking to partner with mega churches, right? We're like, if you're a startup and you're a church plant and you're trying to leverage sports to reach your community, like you just said, if you're an older church that's maybe your demographics are aging and you're trying to figure out how do we retool and refocus to be able to reach the community that's growing around us. If you're, if you have green space and grass and you're like, hey, we could put in a soccer field, like, and you're trying to brainstorm that. Nick, how can Momentum Sports, share your heartbeat? You've done this as a sports pastor. You've connected with all kinds of churches across the country already in doing that with wearing your hat as a sports pastor.
Yeah, that's where the excitement and the timing of joining Momentum Sports for me is really exciting, because it's not just this experience with a large multi-site mega church, because it wasn't that when it started. And we've scaled at all different sizes, and we know how to run sports when there's 30 kids or 60 kids or 10,000 kids. And there's some real excitement around. You mentioned even church planters. And again, if you're
Yeah.
trying to engage your community, you're trying to meet new people, it's still sports is still the best way to do it. Um, I think we think, hey, we've got to have facilities, we've got to have staff, we've got to have whatever. But there's a real play for going using sports first to engage the community. We
Mm.
had a campus at CCV that we actually hired the sports pastor before anybody else. So before the campus pastor was hired, we went with the sports pastor. And that guy was out there running camps and clinics, just renting a field from the local high school. They opened up a soccer league at just renting a public city field park, and just using sports to
It's
engage
amazing.
people, build relationships, start earning some trust. So as the church opens up, now there is an easier on ramp. So again, I think there's big scale options, there's small scale, but those are some of the pathways I think for really for any size. Again, the goal is not to be the next big, multiple thousand persons sports program. For some, it'd be great to help them get there. But if you're just starting off, it's just how do we use sports to connect with people, not even worrying as much about what's the exact mechanism or how many people right away, but just
Yeah.
how do we start with something?
Yeah. Yeah. To leverage it to reach one more person, to
Hmm.
to be able to share the gospel with one more person, to be able to see one more family have hope and maybe be, rescued from the despair, the discouragement that they're living in. So to leverage that, to see that as how can we reach one more person? Nick, what would be, maybe go the other direction? What are some
Hmm.
misconceptions that churches have around sports ministry?
Yeah.
On the previous conversation, the very first episode that you and I did, we talked a little bit about this, but I think there's maybe when churches are trying to figure out how do I start a sports ministry, or what does it look like? There's
Mm.
probably some other misconceptions that are associated with this.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to look to CCV, to look at Grace in the Akron area as these big churches that have staff, that have facilities. And gosh, like how would we get there? Our church doesn't have enough people to support it. We don't have the budget, the staffing, and looking at those misconceptions where you've got to have a bunch of staff, you've got to have facilities, you've got to have a bunch of money. And again, if we just like zoom out and up a layer and go, hey, the goal is how do we use sports to reach and connect with new people in the community that we're not connecting with yet? Then it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a league. It doesn't have to be a mega church sized program. And when I look at all the different ways I've seen people use sports, it may be for some churches, just how do we engage the people that are already in our church to go and be like ambassadors in the community? So is it even just some training for those families in our church, those people that are volunteer coaches out in the city league or somewhere else? How do we help them get a little more heart for using sports as an outreach ministry? It
Yeah.
could be it could be running some camps or clinics. If you have a gym, many churches have gymnasiums. It could be open gyms. It could be an adult league. There's so many different ways. It could be an existing youth or student ministry. And just how do we use sports to be an easier invite? Is it a
Mm.
dodgeball tournament, at the end of your student ministry? Is it a family kickball event? And then you can build it into camps, clinics, intramurals, leagues, non-traditional options. There's homeschool, daytime homeschool programs. There's special needs. There's a wide array of things, and that's
Yeah.
where as we connect with churches, trying to just cast that high level vision. How do we use sports to connect with people? And then let's make it make sense in your environment. And again, it could just be training your people to go out into the community.
Yeah.
Eventually, maybe you're doing things where you're on campus or renting facilities, and you just see the Lord work and grow it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, you might not even have a gym or space in your church, but there is a gym in your community. Can you
Mm,
rent the local high school? Can you one of my favorite events when I was a youth pastor at our church in Maryland, we would do mission trips to Haiti every year. We
mm,
would take students to Haiti every year. And so we did a fundraiser, we called it Dodgeball for Haiti. And so
mm,
we rented the high school gym for a Saturday. We were there the whole day, and we would have students, high school students, not only that are going on our mission trip, but each student had to build a dodgeball team.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
fun. You know, we did it as a fundraiser, but it was an outreach event. It checked multiple boxes, but it allowed us to build relationships with all kinds of people in the community because we did it at the high school.
Hmm.
So think outside the box with some of these things. There's unique ways that you can leverage sports. So Nick,
Yeah, and I think
go.
from the leadership, it's really just, hey, can we really cast a vision of outreach of new people? So it's not just an inward focused sporting event. I would tell you, I have very little interest in that. How do we make an outreach? If we're going to put together a men's softball team, can it be half church people and half not? In your
Mhm.
example, a dodgeball tournament, how do we use that as an opportunity and leverage to bring in people not already connected to the church? I talked with a guy, Bryce, last week at Unpacking It. And he's got this fantasy football fellowship where he's using fantasy football as a tool just to help disciple people. So these people are in a fantasy football league together, but he's providing curriculum to go deeper into the Word and some sports examples, but
Yeah.
diving deeper into their faith. So how do we get more creative, small
Mhm.
groups? We've seen at our church, small groups or home groups or whatever your church might call it. That's a really popular ministry at many churches. But how do
Yeah.
you make that a little bit more sports focused to reach people? Not
Yes.
every group, not everyone loves sports, but if we had a pickleball small group, if we had a walking or hiking or biking small group, is that going to be a way to engage new people, to eventually, again, to be able to share the gospel, to get them into a
Yeah.
relationship with Jesus and connected to a local church? And sports is just that, maybe that front porch to get there.
Mhm. I'm a huge fan of Bryce and Unpacking It Ministries and what they're doing because my son and I are both in fantasy leagues, and to literally use the resources that he's providing is phenomenal. They're world class, and so we actually did a Momentum podcast episode, season 4. Go check it out if you're interested in learning how to leverage your fantasy sports league at your church in your youth ministry with uh, guys and families. That is a big deal, and so Bryce is creating content and resources to help you do those things and leverage that. So, yeah, those are great ideas, Nick. Keep going. Let's maybe
Yeah.
focus in a little bit more on the small church that has a limited budget and they're trying to recruit volunteers and they want to build an effective sports ministry. What do you say to them? How do they start?
Yeah, I think what the space that we're really trying to fill is to be able to come alongside those churches, share the expertise we have. We're still very early in this momentum sports timeline, but as we start building out more curriculums and playbooks and manuals to be able to work with the church, and that's really what I would love to spend a lot of my time doing, is how do I connect with churches, understand what are their needs, what's their size, what's their budget, facilities, some of those big pillars, and then to be able to look at all those kind of ministry options and go, hey, how can we help you get started with something? And then to be able to walk alongside you and help you think through, hey, if you're going to start a sports anything, even if it's just a monthly clinic on the weekends, let alone a league or trying to put teams together, how can we come alongside and offer a lot of resources that, again, we'll have basic templates, but it has to be customized to make sense in your area, in your church, in your community. But everything from, okay, if we've decided we're going to do X, we're going to run a clinic. Okay, we've got
Mhm.
to work backwards. How much time do we need to build a registration? Hey, what should be on our registration? Are we charging or not? Are we including a shirt or not? What are we doing for facilities? How are we going to market it? So bringing a lot of the expertise that, again, I'm grateful for the timing of joining Momentum now, because even 5, 10 years ago, I would not have had as much experience with so many different types of environments. Where now I feel like, man, just about any size, we've done some work with churches. We've seen great success stories of churches starting from nothing and really growing into
Yeah.
thriving self-sufficient ministries.
Mhm.
But just understanding those elements of running a sports program, and again, coming alongside, being able to offer those resources, the timelines, for those that decide to go down the path of leagues, to be able to help with resources of, how do you take registrations effectively? Where should we look for uniforms or equipment or whatever else? Where do we, over the years, we've been able to help a number of churches with uh, rules, parent meetings, coach trainings, again, having just a baseline that people can start with, and then
Yeah.
working with them to customize and shape it, because it's really
Yep.
daunting to start totally from scratch. So if I'm talking to a church that wants to start a Pee Wee soccer league, to start from the ground level is daunting, because you'll have the FIFA laws of the game book might be 2 inches thick, and how do we package that a little bit shorter, where it's helpful to have another church's resources of, well, hey, here's what they do for leagues. Here's a 2 or 3 page doc. And now what do we like? What do we want to keep? What do we want to get rid of, add to? So I think just having a starting point, us being a partner to come alongside you, will be really helpful in terms of just how do we do it. And
Yeah.
another piece I'm really passionate about is just the community, the networking. I know anybody that we've ever talked with over the years, that are doing sports ministry as well. We've gotten better and they've gotten better. And there's such value in sharing resources, sharing ideas, best practices. Hey, how do you guys do this? Just today, I got a text from somebody that said, hey, we're looking to possibly build a gym. And again, that's not going to be most churches. But in this case, he has a network of people to go, hey, has anybody else done that? Or do you know anyone else who's done that we could talk to? And I think because sports ministry is so niche and there's so many people that are kind of on an island, and they're
Yeah.
they're doing this by themselves. They don't feel very supported. Most of the church staff's not able to help them much because there are not a lot of people with sports ministry experience. So if we
Hmm.
can create these environments like we've seen in other areas of momentum, like Momentum Pro or things like that, to where how do we have churches with the opportunity to have connections, to have relationships, to bounce ideas off them, come together and just talk about their struggles,
Yep.
to know they're not alone, number one, to
Yeah.
be encouraged to keep going, and that it's worth the perseverance. But then how they actually get better at their craft, and that's
Yeah.
something I'm really passionate about. Is just how do we do the sports better? Because the sports have got to be good to reach the community, but then we've got
Hmm.
to be intentional with our ministry to see them move from the fields or courts to the church.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you just need somebody else to give you a new or a fresh idea, and then
Hmm.
other times you need somebody to talk you off the ledge. You're like, "This isn't working, let's just blow the thing up." I've
Yeah,
I've for sure had people do that for me, yeah.
yeah. Well, it's such value just in getting some new ideas to then evaluate, hey, is what we're doing, we've been doing this a while, does it still make sense? Is it still best? And even if you decide, hey, we're going to stay the course, this is continues to be what's best for our church
Mhm.
environment. At least we've gone through the exercise every so often to evaluate, hey, does it make sense?
Yeah,
Churches and all ministries are really good at adding things, adding ministries, adding programs. We really struggle to take things away at the same rate.
yeah,
So we get
yeah,
we get overworked, we get cluttered and crowded. So sometimes it's just talking to others that have had great success with, hey, how do we narrow our focus to broaden the impact? Sometimes we're
yeah,
trying to do too much and serve all groups, and how to be more intentional with what's most effective. I think
so
there's a
good.
great play for churches that are doing sports ministry already and growing and having success. I think there's even some value in connecting to look at, hey, what are we looking at in terms of metrics, in terms of data? What ministries are we actually seeing be effective? because
Mhm.
because some of these places, they're running out of space, but they continue to run the same offerings instead of looking at, hey, is one more effective? Are we having a better chance at reaching an 8-year old than a 12-year old? And how do we moneyball it a little bit for ministry purpose and figure out, hey, where should we be pointing our aim and being
Yeah,
strategic and intentional.
yeah. Nick, what would you say to somebody who's like, okay, you got me. I'm in.
Hmm.
I wanna begin leveraging sports as a ministry in our church, in our community. How do you go about identifying the right volunteers? Uh, maybe you don't have those people in your church, or they're not easily coming to mind. How do
Hmm.
you find the volunteers? How do you what would beginning to even equip them or have that conversation look like?
Yeah, I think at some churches, somebody will come to mind right away. If someone's clearly a sports guy or gal that's got great interest or has a reputation in the community. I
Okay.
think sometimes it's talking with partnering organizations or ministries or FCA or AIAs in your areas to go, hey, are there people in our community that maybe I don't have a personal relationship with, but they're
Mhm.
already using sports as an effective ministry in the community? I think sometimes it's hosting an event at your church to try to figure out and kind of unearth who's interested in this sports stuff. So again, whether it's a fantasy football league, whether it's a sports movie night, it could even be on the weekends after your church service. Maybe you've got some footballs and basketballs and frisbees out and whatever else. Just trying to again engage people. We would go to these community events to try to market and promote what we were doing, and it was amazing. All you have to do is put up a soccer goal and have a shooting competition or something with the
Yeah.
target, and it immediately engages people, especially if they're sporty, if they're athletic, if they're competitive. So just how do we create things to kind of unearth, man, do we have people in the church interested?
Yeah.
Adult sports are often a great way. So again, whether it's putting together a team to play in a community, if you have a facility or space and hosting an open gym or a 3-on-3 basketball tournament or a whatever, that's going to give you a good look at who in my church is kind of sporty and interested in that. And then just continuing the conversations from there. As you
Yeah.
grow, you'll find other people that maybe they love the ministry, love the idea of using sports, but they themselves don't want to play or coach, and they're great helps with greeting people, guest services, first impressions, administrative duties. There might be somebody that their kids are want to be involved with sports. They don't want to coach, but they'd be happy to build your schedules or things like that. So it's really trying to
Yeah.
line up someone's giftings with your needs to engage that group, because of course you'll need somebody with more focus time as you get bigger. But when you're just starting, I think it can easily be done with a volunteer, maybe some support from somebody already on your staff, a little bit of part time potentially, depending on what you're doing. Um, but I think what we're trying to say at Momentum Sports is you're going to give us a view of what you have, facility, staffing, budget, and we're going to help find something to get you started, and we'll
Yeah.
grow and go from there. But there's not a minimum requirement necessarily.
Right. Having the vision to say we're going to take a shot at this as a church, and then having an interest meeting, and
Hmm.
inviting some people that that maybe came to your mind, but maybe put it out to your congregation and just say, hey, we're going to have an interest meeting. If you're at all interested, if you want to know more, come show up for this. We're going to serve lunch. We're gonna just talk about it, and what you're going to do in that meeting is not only get buy-in, but literally, Nick, what you're saying there is you're going to have people probably come out of the woodwork that maybe you wouldn't have even thought to invite,
Uh,
and they're going to go, actually, I have access to this thing, or to this, I randomly have 30 cornhole sets in my
hmm.
barn, and you're like, I had no idea. Those kind of
Yeah.
things allows people to engage where you wouldn't have thought to shoulder tap them. And it's allowing the church to be the church. It's equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry, and allowing
Hmm.
a pathway for people to onboard into your ministry. I think that even connects to one of the maybe misconceptions, is that people think I got to go hire a sports pastor out the gate. So yeah,
Yeah,
I get riled up
100%.
about this stuff.
I can remember out at our East Mesa campus, which is near your Cubs spring training ballpark, and we did
Yeah.
just that. We had an interest meeting after church. Hey, if anyone's interested in learning more, and we had this guy Richard that I'd never met, didn't know him from Adam, and this guy was so pumped. He had young kids. He's already coaching in other leagues. He's like, dude, this is awesome. Anything I can do to help, I'm in. If you want to use my garage for storage, like happy to be the storage guy. And he ended up as a volunteer coach, and within a few seasons became part-time staff for us, which was great because he had a full-time job, but had a huge passion and love for using sports as an outreach, and just wanted to be a part of it. And it was
Yeah.
great. And he continues to be a great servant for the church, many years
Yeah.
later.
I recently heard about a church that they were wanting to start a fitness class, and they're
Mm,
like, how do we get weights? How do we get, the equipment? And this guy had all this stuff sitting in his basement. He had actually been trying to get rid of it and not sure what to do. They'd had a garage sale.
yeah.
Most of it didn't sell. I'm like, you never know. You never, God knows, you might not. So having the
Yeah.
conversation, putting it out there.
Yeah, and that's why really the exciting part is this idea of just using some kind of sports has such a wide range. And there are people. I met a guy a couple weeks ago in Indiana that's doing a great job with this, gym CrossFit type ministry. Like I said, other just kind of non-traditional things, daytime homeschool athletics, special
Yeah.
needs sports. There's these groups and people um, that want to be served, want to be included. Maybe there's not a lot of options, but yeah, that example, a CrossFit or a weightlifting type gym, to where now all of a sudden you've got opportunities to build relationships, which the
Yeah.
reality is, for all of the curriculum that I've shared with churches over the years or created, all the devotional cards, all the invite events. At the end of the day, the number one reason why people come and check out a church is because of a relationship they've built with a believer and someone that's walked with them. Maybe they've walked through them through tough times, but that relationship at a gym is hugely available. You're connecting, you're working out, you're getting to know each other. Maybe you're integrating faith, scripture, worship music, devotionals at the end of it. And again, now we're just kind of giving people a little bit of a taste, and over time the Lord works through them. But there are so many ways to use sports, and not just the
Yeah.
traditional team sports.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, Nick, let's talk now the church that maybe they've had something going. Maybe they've had a T-ball rec league. Maybe
Hmm.
they've done a week of soccer camp at their church in their backfield. Like, how do you assess, is this successful? How do you, what are maybe some of the systems or structures that need to be put in place early so that it doesn't become chaotic, or,
Yeah.
to evaluate this is effective?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love you bringing up that group of churches, because I think in my mind there's kind of three groups of churches. Of course, there's more than that, but in terms of momentum sports, there's that church that's not really engaging with sports yet, and maybe they're ready for conversation. You've got
Mhm.
the second group of churches that are using sports in some way, but again, maybe they're on an island. They're not in community with other people doing sports ministry. They're not getting fresh ideas or having conversations like this of, hey, what do you measure? What's a success?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the third group of churches that are doing sports at a high level very successfully, and now they need to be given back to the other two. And I really think
Right.
that like peer connection is huge and something I'm excited about. But
Mhm.
for that second group, hey, what's considered success? I think that's where when a church is using sports, that's something at the highest level that's got to be established pretty early. Is, hey, what is our goal? Is it just to get as many kids as possible playing in our sports? Is it to see kids come over and families try our church? Are we measuring baptisms? Are we measuring next steps? Are we measuring commitments of faith? So many things we could measure. And church and sports ministry data is so complex because we know God's the one doing the work. So we have to be very careful that we're not taking credit for it. But oftentimes, I've seen sports as, hey, it is that front porch. If not the number one job, a really high level job is they've got to be able to engage the community of people that are not already engaged at a church. So we've got to fill kind of that top of the funnel, knowing that
Mhm.
not everybody's going to come into a relationship with Christ right away. So how do we have as many people as possible as we can, kind of in that top of the funnel to make their way down? Um, but I also think the sports pastor, the sports team, whatever that looks like, they can't do everything. They can't be engaged in the community and running the sports and fully responsible for discipleship, evangelism, next steps, and growth. So it really is that partnership with the church of, in a perfect world, we're doing sports really well. We're being intentional with invitations to church, exposure to the scripture and prayer, um, but then at some point they do come check out church, and then now hopefully our kids pastors, our youth pastors, they're engaging with the families, and it's not just the sports people pushing it up the hill. When are the weekend church people coming over to the fields or the courts? And if you can get some exposure of maybe a youth pastor is leading the devotional once a month for the teams that are in their age range, now there's some relationship, some connection. Again, it's an easier on ramp when they get to church. We would try to look at things like, hey, what percentage of kids have even checked out church? Again, just as a data point of, hey, are we seeing more or less people come try it? Are we seeing what we would kind of call a parking lot conversion, which would be somebody that came into sports, has never engaged with our church? Now, what percentage of those people, within that year, came and checked out church or an event or a camp or whatever? We commonly saw about 12 to 15% of the people that had never engaged with our church. Now they have tried it out in some way. Um, now, is that good or bad? I have no idea. There's very little data out there to compare it to,
Sure.
but it's a data point to then over time we can see, hey, are we going the right way? Are we losing some traction? Do we need to be more intentional with the invite? Because if you can do sports well, you're going to bring a lot of people to you. The reality is, if you can communicate and organize, you'll be ahead of 90% of the sports programs out there. But then are we intentional with getting people across to the church? Are our coaches really seeing it as a discipleship opportunity and being intentional with their time? Or are we just hoping that, kind of by osmosis, they'll come check out the church? And of course, God can do whatever he wants, but we also want to make sure we're intentional with, what are those metrics and data points that we want to be targeting to. I'm never forcing someone to go to church or take a step, but how do we do everything we can intentionally to make those steps available?
Nick, that's so good. I love your heart and sharing those things of like valuing and understanding the right metrics.
Hmm.
There's a lot of times in church circles in the ministry world where we have certain goals and aspirations, things that we want to see happen, but when we don't have them in the right model, they might not make sense. The data might point us in the wrong direction. A lot of times we see even take church websites, for example, like,
Hmm.
you want people to come attend your church, but then your website doesn't have the address of the church clearly listed,
Hmm.
and it's buried somewhere. It's not even on the footer of your page, or there's it's hard to find, and so you got to have 5 clicks to even figure out what the address of the church is to be able to come, or what the service times are and what's expected. So things like that is a big deal. And I think when you're focusing on running a sports event, a sports ministry, think through the details. Are the
Hmm.
instructions clear? Is the questions that a family is going to need to sign up, to register, to come and attend? Are the explanations, are the instructions clear? Is the registration process complicated and clunky, or is it concise and easy to use? And so those little things, when you're signing up your sports, your kid for sports camp or whatever it is, in church world, we want to make that process as easy as possible so that those families, those students can have the best experience, that it represents not only your church, but Christ in a positive way. And then those families are like, man, this is amazing. We want to come back. We want to be a part of this.
Well, if you look at, if as a church you're going to make that commitment to use sports as an outreach, we've got to then make the church more accessible. So also to your point, which is a great one, being more aware of, hey, are we using super like insider churchy jargon about what
Yeah.
our ministries are or what the practices are? And I can remember a guy years ago going, man, I want to try church sometime, but I don't even know what to wear. It's funny the
Yeah.
barriers have people have of whether or not to try a church or not. So yeah, how do we make it really
Yeah.
accessible, really friendly? If we are going to do, if I was consulting a new church to do an initial whatever, a soccer clinic or some kind of an event to engage people, I would pretty shortly thereafter want to be strategic with having a church event that I can invite them to. Not something really scary. This is not going to be a high level theological doctrine seminar. But hey, how do we have some kind of a church invite weekend or a barbecue or potluck or whatever your church might do in your space? But if we're going to use sports to bring them here, we've got to be intentional with, hey, what's next? What are we letting
Yeah.
them know about next? How are we making them feel really welcome and
Yeah.
inviting?
Yeah. Nick, that stuff, I think, for us as longtime pastors, where we've been in the church, we maybe your church measures baptisms, and that's a huge win and a celebration, and it should be. That
Hmm.
is a big deal to see somebody want to get baptized. They're committing their life to surrendering to the Lord. They're going public with that decision. But then when you put those pictures of baptism on the homepage of your website, the general population who doesn't know Jesus, maybe they haven't even come to your church yet, they don't understand why are there people getting, it looks like they're being drowned on your like it to somebody who's not a
Yeah,
believer yet, and that you're it can cause confusion. So even in
yeah.
sports, like when you have picture of a couple girls playing soccer, and you say youth sports league, join us. You're like, well, is it only soccer?
Hmm.
Is it for boys? Like, the having things match and sync up and communicate clearly is a big deal. So just think those things through. We want to help you with that. Uh, Nick, what are some just practical ways that people can reach out to you? That if somebody's like, I'd love to engage in this conversation, I would love Nick or Momentum Sports,
Yeah.
your team, to be a resource for us. How do they go about getting connected to us? What would that look like?
Yeah, well, this is either a perfect or an imperfect segue after talking about, websites and marketing and next steps. We're super early into Momentum Sports, so we've got a great vision. We know where we're going. We're building the things. We have the knowledge. But at the moment, you won't even find a Momentum Sports website yet. I know it's being built. I've seen the wireframe design for it. So the best way to connect right now is my email. It's my first initial last name, N Demos, Demos, at buildmomentum.org. And it's been great already having churches reach out going, hey, I'm kind of thinking about using sports. Man, would love to hop on a call. And that's what's happening right now is just connections, conversations, Zoom calls of learning more about people's church, their vision, and be able to alongside them, be able to build connections with other churches in their area, maybe where there may be a church you can go visit and see what they've built, see what they have, and I think as a piece of encouragement to churches, I would just say, keep in mind that sports ministry, you're really playing the long game. And that's the beauty of sports. Is hopefully kids are playing it for a while, but when you look at data and metrics, there's so much data that is untrackable because maybe somebody played sports, 3 years ago, and now they've had something come up in their life where they're looking for a
Yeah.
church or pastoral support, and they know about your church. And I think that's where is this fine balance of, yes, there's certain metrics we want to track. Of course, it can be informative to us. But if your church were to run a monthly sports clinic, or put teams out into the community, or train your coaches to be disciples out in their city league practices, and if nothing else happened, but your church's reputation grew as a church that cared about the community, that wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily looking for anything back. People knew, oh yeah, that church does sports well. Oh yeah, their parents are great. Some of those things that are not as measurable are still impactful.
Yep. All right, Nick, I hear you. I know we're building the plane while it's in the air. Um, but give the people just a teaser of kind of, I know for us longtime pastors, we like our alliteration. I know you've been working on like three
Yeah,
C's of
yeah.
momentum source. Give us those kind of give us a teaser of where you're headed.
Yeah, yeah. I think the big, most of my time right now are kind of falling into three buckets, which I'm calling curriculum, coaching, and conference. So I think from curriculum, again, if you're a church that, man, I'm just not even sure where to start. If I decided I wanted to do a league, what would I even do? Just curriculum, playbooks, handbooks. How do you train your coaches? How do you train your parents? What are some devotional material options? What are rules? What needs to go on a website? A lot of those practical things I'm calling curriculum. Coaching and conference, there's some shared mechanisms to it, but that's really like that connection, getting away from the isolation or people feeling like they're on an island. I think there's great value in how do we learn from others, whether you're big or small, old or new, share best practices, share resources. I've always felt a burden coming from a larger church of, man, we've got all this history and knowledge and documents and whatever's. How do we help somebody else like speed up their learning a little bit? I think that's really important, and I think the opportunity for what I'm kind of calling an in-person learning lab. We were really blessed over the years to have many churches come out and visit because they wanted to see our space, spend some time with us, and again, that was valuable for us. We continued to sharpen our pencil, and it was valuable for them, and it was really helpful to physically see a space, to see, hey, what are they doing in terms of signage? How are they promoting their church services? What does it look like when you have your own facilities? What does it look like when you're offsite? You're at someone else's facilities. How do you make it look like it's your sports program? So all
Yeah.
those things, but it may not be practical for everybody to fly out to Phoenix. If you
Right.
want to come, glad to have you. You might want to wait until Halloween or so. It's about to get hot. We're heading into second summer pretty soon.
Yeah.
But there are churches all over the country that I'd love to build this network to be able to go to San Antonio or Akron or Louisville or wherever else and go, hey, here's a church that's doing great work, and you can come see what they're doing and learn from it. So I think that network, that community is a
Yeah.
piece that I'm excited to help build.
Mm. I love it, Nick. I'm excited to see where God takes it.
Hmm.
Please, if you're listening, none of this is like set in stone. We're trying to follow the Lord's leading.
Yeah.
We're turning over all the rocks and seeing what's there. But the heartbeat behind Momentum Ministry Partners and the heartbeat behind what Nick is saying in Momentum Sports is really that connection. We want to help you connect sports to the community and the community to Christ. And so,
Mm.
however we can help do that, we're in. We want to be a resource for you, and to that end, we're going to continue equipping, giving resources, making introductions, connections. We see our job is to help cut the red tape and make you the heroes of your community as you have a thriving sports ministry, and we would love to see that happen. So. Nick, thank you for sharing your wisdom one more time with us. I'm sure you'll be back on future episodes. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast and all of them that you've faithfully listened to over the years. We'll have more on sports coming up. In a few weeks, we're going to be sharing some things on how your church can partner with parents and how you can have a healthy and thriving parents ministry, not only in your student and children's ministry, but also through a sports lens. So excited about those. Just give you a little teaser. And as always, reach out to us if we can help partner with you in any way, shape, or form. We're here. You can reach us. Nick gave you his email, but info@buildmomentum.org is the easiest way to connect. So that'll do it for today's episode. Thanks, Nick.
See you next time, Eric.
Thanks for listening to the Momentum Ministry Partners Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, would you subscribe, rate, and leave us a review? That helps more people discover this podcast. We'd also love for you to share this episode with someone in your network who could benefit from the conversation. Because we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource, we'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover in a future episode, send us an email to info@buildmomentum.org. Or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. And if you want to learn more about Momentum Youth Conference, Urban Centers, Grace College Akron, Momentum Marketplace, or Momentum Pro, head over to buildmomentum.org. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.